I can tell you where we're at,
Chapter
John.
5.
We're at my house in the back room.
Yeah.
And I've got my frozen cup.
I've not lost my mind
Yeah.
that far yet.
You know what this helps me do?
What's that?
Let it go.
Oh, that's good.
It's a frozen cup.
Did you
Remember that song in that movie? Yeah,
Oh, yes. Yes, I have deleted it from Apple Music so it can't show up in my car anymore.
yeah.
I saw online where there's this funny little meme where they're arresting Elsa
Okay.
because or is it Elsa? Elsa's the frozen girl,
Yeah,
right?
she's the mean girl.
Yeah. So she got arrested because of all of this cold weather.
Well, enough about that.
Right.
Boy, this is the worst introduction we've ever done.
Yeah, you might want to just turn back now.
Yeah, well, it's Two Beards in a Bible.
Yep.
And I'm Dave.
And I'm John.
And this is John. And we are in James, and we are starting fresh in chapter 5. And I'm not sure whose turn it is to read.
I think it's yours.
My turn. So I'm going to read the first 6 verses. It says, "Come now, you rich, weep and howl for your miseries that are coming upon you. Your riches are corrupted, and your garments are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver are corroded, and your corrosion will be a witness against you and will eat your flesh like fire. You have heaped up treasure in the last days. Indeed, the wages of the laborers who mowed your fields, which you kept back by fraud, cry out, and the cries of the reapers have reached the ears of the Lord of Sabbath." I don't know. Is that how you say that? That's not Sabbath. Sabaoth?
Yeah.
Sabaoth.
Yeah.
"You have lived on the earth in pleasure and luxury and have fattened your hearts as in the day of slaughter. You have condemned, you have murdered the just. He does not resist you."
So I have a little note about
Okay.
that word, Sabaoth, or whatever it is, and it's literally in Hebrew, hosts, Lord of hosts.
Okay. I wonder why they put that in there.
That's a good question.
I have no idea. Must be something with the King James version. He says, he talks about the rich, and he says, "Weep and howl for your miseries that are coming upon you." Now, do you think this is talking about something that was going to happen to them in their physical lives now, or something that was coming later, or it was a spiritual condemnation?
I kind of think it leans towards figurative.
I do too.
Yeah, it's and certainly it could have a morsel of physicality to it, but one of the things that I was thinking as you were reading it is that, man, it's got to be pretty bad if your gold and silver is corroded, because gold is known to be one of those things that doesn't corrode.
Right.
You know, so just leave that to my brain to go in a weird
Yeah,
place.
oh,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
But that is that would lend a little bit more towards the idea of it being something that is speaking of, you know, in eternity, none of this stuff is going to matter.
Yeah.
It's all useless.
I think the other reason, if we think about this in the light of what we just talked about in James 4 at the end, where he talks about, don't boast about, tomorrow, where you're going to go buy and sell things and make all this money. Don't
Right.
brag about that. And I think this kind of goes along with that, those thoughts. People shouldn't be bragging about all of the money that they're making. And then at the end of chapter 4, he says, "Therefore, to who knows to do good and does not do it, to him it is sin." Whoever he's talking to knows the things that they're doing in whatever commerce they're involved in, or however they're treating other people. They know they're not doing the right thing.
Right.
And they know that it's a sinful behavior that they're involved in.
Right.
And now when he brings all of these things out, I think it's a reflection about what was previously said. Mm-hmm. Would you agree with this, John?
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, I think that is a good summation.
Yeah.
The idea of riches, I mean, come now you rich, weep and howl, just you really stop and think of it, as far as application for today, there's really not a one of us, especially in this country, that, we fit that bill,
Oh yeah.
So, I mean, it speaking of not trusting in those things, basically, and that is certainly still true today. We should not trust in riches that will eventually corrode and go away.
Yeah, he talks about he talks about them keeping back the wages of their workers or their reapers, which you kept back and fraudulently.
Right.
So he's talking about these people, they made money off the backs of the poor.
Yeah.
Now this is a theme in here.
Right.
In James. He's talked about this sort of thing before when he talks about the rich who drag people into court and take their money.
Right.
So it's kind of a theme in James that, here it's in chapter 2. He says you have dishonored the poor man. Do not the rich oppress you and drag you into the courts? Do they not blaspheme the noble name by which you are called? So there's this theme of James about different classes of people.
Right.
Right. It's kind of strewn all throughout it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's again with Christ. There is no hierarchy.
Right.
And it's not that there aren't some that have more. It's not that there isn't some that have more and have less. Of course, that's just dependent upon on our own personal situations. But it's really speaking of an equality of spirit, an equality of personhood, if you will. Mm-hmm. It's not really speaking of. It's not like a communist or socialist type of a equality on every level.
Right.
So
why don't we move on to verse 7 and read through verse 12. 7 to 12.
All righty. Let me see here. At verse 7, it says, "Therefore be patient, brethren, until the coming of the Lord. See how the farmer waits for the precious fruit of the earth, waiting patiently for it until it receives the early and latter rain. You also be patient. Establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is at hand. Do not grumble against one another, brethren, lest you be condemned. Behold, the judge is standing at the door. My brethren, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord as an example of suffering and patience. Indeed, we count them blessed who endure. You have heard of the perseverance of Job and seen the end intended by the Lord, that the Lord is very compassionate and merciful. But above all, my brethren, do not swear either by heaven or by earth or with any other oath, but let your yes be yes and your no, no, lest you fall into judgment."
Okay, a couple interesting things in there. So he talks about this idea of being patient until the coming of the Lord. And I guess the idea of that is just keep doing what you're supposed to be doing and don't worry about, don't worry about the means to an end.
He goes on in verse 9 and says, "Don't grumble against one another."
Right.
So there must be something like that going on.
Yeah, absolutely. He says that, you also be patient, for the coming of the Lord is at hand. Mm-hmm. Now, what do you think he's talking about there?
Establish your hearts for the coming of the Lord. Yeah. So again, instead of going back to verse 7, being patient. Going forward to verse 9, not grumbling against one another, brethren, lest you be condemned. And talking about, again, being patient, establishing your hearts. I think it's talking about the brethren working together and focusing on the things of eternity and not the things that we can get mad about.
Yeah, exactly.
With each other.
Yeah, Yeah, about who's doing what or who's not doing what.
Yeah. And earlier today, as I was telling you about my daughter's car misfiring, and I have a neighborhood mechanic that is a great guy that I called him, and he said, you can come right on over. So it's a convenient thing to have someone like that nearby. And so I went over, and he's a religious fellow, and we have some good conversations from time to time. And we were talking about, how claiming Christ, if you claim Christ, there are certain expectations. At least we know that the Lord expects certain things of His people. And sometimes you see people that claim Christ, and yet their lives show the fruit of someone who does not have Christ. They align themselves with, and they do things that boggle the mind.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That are, and sometimes these people are in the church. Sometimes we see our brethren making decisions, and you wonder, well, I couldn't do that. How are they doing that? And then you stop and think about it, and you think, okay, so what does this have to do with the price of tea in China?
Right.
Is this something that is doctrinal? Is this something that changes their faithfulness to the Lord?
No.
And if no, then leave it alone.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. So, in as far as the church goes, we're to be working towards godly things.
Yeah.
And not talking about, whether or not a Christian should buy a Ford rather than a Toyota.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, or whatever it is.
Right. Whatever it
or
is.
however,
I'm using a crazy example.
yeah, whatever decisions they make.
Right.
We have a friend of ours that, and he lives in an apartment, and we were talking about that last night, and we were talking about, there's like a really good thing about his attitude towards his where he lives. He's like, it's just a place I live. It's not versus me. I'm kind of tied into this place, and I've done all this work on it, and maybe I've got some things maybe out of place, right? But this guy, because he doesn't do that, he may have a better perspective on material things than I do.
Right.
It's interesting to think of things that way.
Right. Yeah. And it's and is it wrong, for someone to have a nice house that they've put a lot of effort into? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
It's not something that the Lord speaks against. Now, if that thing becomes your God,
yeah, that's different.
If it is the thing that rules your mind and your heart, well, then now you got a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. But I can definitely see where, like, if you weren't tied down to certain things in your life, would free you up in other ways to make other things more important.
Yeah, I mean that's even. There's an instance in the scriptures, and again, you'll have to help me remember where it is, but Paul, I believe, is speaking, and he's telling the brethren, because of a present distress, that they might want to avoid being married for the time being.
Yeah.
And it's because, and that's not, take that out of context. People use that to say that, that you shouldn't get married, and that's, of course, not the case at all. It was for that present distress, because if you have a family, if you have a wife and then children that you have to see after, then it doesn't allow you to deal with the task at hand.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there are just times in life where that's true.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't, if you find yourself prepared for that time where you can loose yourself of some thing that might tie you down, you're in a better position. And so that's that just seems like a little bit of wisdom there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we got to be careful about how we view other people. Like you said, we judge other people about things that have nothing to do with Christianity.
Yeah,
got to be careful about those things.
Yeah, and it's true with anything. There are we can all be guilty of being the smartest person in the room, and there might be things that people do and decisions that they make that we think, how can they do that? That doesn't make any
I wouldn't
sense at
do
all.
that.
Right. But
the great thing is you don't have to.
You're not them.
Yeah, you're not them, and you don't have to do that. You can do whatever you want.
Right.
And just leave them alone.
Now, again, there are, of course, speaking of the brethren, there are scriptures that tell us that we are to watch out for one another, and that if we see a brother that is stumbling, that we lovingly help them back. So certainly we have the wherewithal and the command to help each other if we see a problem, but that doesn't give us the opportunity to run every aspect of a person's life according to our desire.
Exactly. Absolutely. What is it? What's where we're going to pick up here? Indeed, we count them blessed who endure. You have heard of the perseverance of Job and seen the end intended by the Lord, that the Lord is very compassionate and merciful. And I think what he's talking about here is, if you think about the life of Job, he started off pretty good, and he was blessed by God, and all of that was lost, and then the end was very good. Mm-hmm. And I think this is pointing towards, we can think about our own lives on earth. We can have ups and downs, but if our focus is heavenward, then we really don't have a whole lot to worry about.
Yeah. Speaking of the Lord's purpose, all things work together for good to the called, according to His purpose. I think that was a previous episode we talked about that. But when you look at Job, and you say that the Lord is very compassionate. Well, if you take the difficult part of Job's life and say that the Lord is compassionate, that might be hard to wrap your head around. But Job understood. The good thing about Job is he understood that the Lord was compassionate, and the Lord had all of the authority, and the Lord was to be given glory. But if in our human minds, if we focus on the bad and focus on the here and now so much, we can lose sight of the big picture.
Yeah.
And the Lord's purpose overall, plays out, and that He is compassionate and merciful. That the end of Job was better than the beginning.
Yep, absolutely.
And so when we think about the things that happen to people in this life, there are some of us that are going to be struck down younger. Some of us that are going to be stricken with illnesses and painful, awful things. There are, some brethren that I've known that have gotten illnesses that caused them to die a painful, awful death that I hope I don't.
Yes.
And but nonetheless, does that mean that the Lord wasn't compassionate upon them? No. But His eternal purpose it's in eternity. It's not here.
Yes.
And so we have to keep that in mind.
Yeah. I like this last verse. This is a good thing to talk about. He says, but above all, my brethren, do not swear either by heaven or by earth or any other oath, but let your yes be yes and your no be no, lest you fall into judgment. Have you ever heard anybody refuse, and I've heard of this, like if they go to court and they'll hold out the Bible and they'll say, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Mm-hmm. I think about a Three Stooges episode where he says that. And they have the Bible there. And I've heard of some Christians who will not do that. Mm-hmm. All they'll say is, you know what? Yeah, I'll let my yes be yes and my no be no.
Yeah. This may be one of those things where you might look at me sideways, but I would probably be one of the ones that say, I affirm that I'll tell you the truth.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I would abstain from swearing.
Yeah.
But I would affirm it.
You're not going to swear, but you know all the words?
Yeah. Well, unfortunately.
Yes.
Growing up where I grew up.
Yes. Well, you did grow up in Barberton. You did go to kindergarten in Barberton, right? Yeah. You learned all the words. So, yeah. I think I've never had to testify in court. And I did it at a deposition one time. Mm-hmm. but I don't remember having to do this,
Right.
So, all right, let's look at the last. How many? We got 10 minutes left. Let me see here. Oh, I'm just going to read to the end of the chapter, and we'll talk about it all in the last 10 minutes.
All right.
He says, "Is there any among you suffering? Let him pray. Is anyone cheerful? Let him sing psalms. Is anyone among you sick? Let him call for the elders of the church, and let them pray over him, anointing him with oil in the name of the Lord. And the prayer of faith will save the sick, and the Lord will raise him up, and if he has committed sins, he will be forgiven. Confess your trespasses to one another and pray for one another that you may be healed. The effective, fervent prayer of a righteous man avails much. Elijah was a man with a nature like ours, and he prayed earnestly that it would not rain, and it did not rain in the land for 3 years and 6 months. And he prayed again, and the heaven gave rain, and the earth produced its fruit. Brethren, if any among you wanders from the truth, and someone turns him back, let him know that he who turns a sinner from error of his way will save a soul from death and cover a multitude of sins." Okay, man, there's some deep stuff in here.
Right.
I hope we can get through this in 10 minutes.
Yeah. Lofty goals.
Okay, so he talks about people that are in certain situations, right? Somebody who's suffering, somebody who's cheerful, somebody who's sick. And there are some instructions to do to those things. So the person who's suffering, let him pray. I think that's self-explanatory, right?
Yeah, put your hope in the Lord.
Yep, absolutely. If anybody's cheerful, let him sing psalms. You ever sang a psalm when you're happy?
Yeah.
I have, especially in the summertime.
Yeah.
If it's like June 15th, right? It's 73 degrees. Down in Shreve, Ohio. I'm mowing this vacant lot. I'm by myself. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. Nobody's bugging me. Listen, it doesn't get much better than that for me. It's a really good place to be.
Are you singing at the top?
I am singing sometimes for sure, because I love that's the place I like to be. You know, so
And the idea of singing psalms too. If you think about the psalms, they're wisdom.
yeah,
And so when you're cheerful, that's probably a point in time where maybe you're susceptible to some tomfoolery in your mind. And so I kind of see that there's room there to see that that we should stay grounded, we should be happy, be cheerful, but within the confines of wisdom.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Now, John, I know that you serve as an elder, and I want to know what kind of oil you use. Right? It says
W30.
you anoint
full synthetic.
You anoint people with is it Quaker State?
No. Probably Castrol.
Castrol. Okay. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I think it's there's a large portion of I'm not sure that this totally. Well, let me back up. I think it is having to do with the idea that if any among the church are sick, that we should stick together, that we should use the church for what it is, for what the Lord has given it to us for, to build us up and to keep us strong. And so, as the elders in the church are the leaders of such, and so it would be right to call them to lead others in prayer and to petition the Lord for help during a time.
One time I was doing this drywall job, John, for this older couple, and they went to I guess what we would call an institutional church, and we were talking about some biblical subject about somebody who was sick, and they said, well, they're going to call the elders and have them come down and anoint them with oil.
Right.
Okay, and I never heard of that before, so I said, oh, that's interesting. Is that a thing we should be doing today?
Yeah, that's what I say. I believe that would be something that that is,
I always understood it to be a cultural practice,
yeah,
but
yeah, there's a link here, and I was just looking at it, and then I closed it. But what is it? Mark 16:13. I'm going to go back over there. Mark 16.
it's right before the Great Commission.
16 and at verse 13. Am I seeing that right? Mark 6:13.
Oh,
6. I added a
there's
1.
a big difference.
Yeah, there is a big difference. Mark 6. Mark 6 and at verse 13. Slowly turning there. Bear with me. 6 at verse 13 says, verse 12, it says, "So they went out and preached that people should repent, and they cast out many demons and anointed with oil many who were sick and healed them." And so then 16:18 is also pointed out there, and that 6:18, and it says, "Because John had said to Herod, 'It is not lawful for you to have your,'" that can't be right. That's where I got the 16. It is 16. Mark 16:18. 16. Mark 16 and at verse 18. Says, "And they will take up serpents, and if they drank anything deadly, it will by no means hurt them. They will lay hands on the sick, and they will recover." So, as you follow the dots there, it kind of seems like we're pointing towards a time when there were miraculous gifts given to some. And so, in this particular point in time, if you called upon the elders and they were to anoint someone with oil, there would be the possibility of a miraculous healing of sorts.
Read the note I wrote in my Bible.
The elders may have had spiritual gifts. Oil may have been used like clay for a blind man. There you go.
Similar?
Yeah. Yeah.
Similar thought. Not sure.
Yeah. And that's where when you first asked me the question, I'm like, I'm not so sure that applies. That's where I was kind of, my brain was going.
This is one of those situations where if there were some elders at a local church and they decided that this was something that they ought to do, I would not condemn them for doing this. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't. I'm not sure that I would do it, but I could never condemn somebody for doing that.
Certainly to get together to pray.
Yes.
You know, if someone's having an issue, certainly why wouldn't you, call the elders? And I've had people call me and Rick and say, I'm dealing with something difficult at the time. We have a lady now who's dealing with cancer and is having a lot of difficulty with treatments and so on. And she'll call us and she'll talk to us and and then we'll mention those things to the brethren and instruct people to pray for her and so on. But as far as the anointing with oil, I think that's a throwback to these times.
Yeah. All right, let's move on.
Okay.
It says in verse I don't know what is this, verse 15. He says let me see here. "And the prayer of the faith will save the sick, and the Lord will raise him up. And if he has committed sins, he will be forgiven." I don't know. I have a note here written here that I said sickness is not a result of a spiritual condition. Mm-hmm.
Right.
We're not going to become physically sick because we're spiritually off the mark. I don't think God respects us in that manner.
Right. And again, we just got done talking about the eternal purpose of the Lord being, his people with him in eternity. There really isn't a promise today, certainly, that the Lord is going to heal infirmities, physical infirmities.
Right.
It is, but it was a thing back then.
For sure.
There were some that had received, by the laying on of the hands of the apostles. They received spiritual gifts such as that.
That's not to say that you can't pray for healing,
Right.
and God can answer your prayer.
Correct.
That's it.
Right.
He says, confess your trespasses to one another and pray for one another that you may be healed. Well, I think he's talking about a spiritual situation there. He's not talking about me and saying, oh, John, I went on the neighbor's property. He's not talking about that. He's talking about your faults.
Right.
Right? So, we have different faults. He says the effective prayer of a fervent prayer of a righteous man avails much. What makes a man righteous?
Being that he follows the Lord, he follows the Scriptures.
Right.
And just to throw into that, if you're a faithful person, a righteous person, then you are going to pray in such a way that you're in alignment with the Lord's will.
Yes. Yep. And that means that person, whoever that righteous person, the only way a person is made righteous is through the blood of Christ.
Right.
He's talking about Christians here. He's not talking about the neighbor who's a good guy.
Right.
He says Elijah was a man with a nature like ours, and he talks about how Elijah prayed for rain, he prayed for it not to rain, and it didn't rain, and then he prayed for it to rain, and it did rain, just as an illustration of that prayer. I'm rushing through here, John, because we're at the end. Where are we at?
31.
31. We're good.
Yeah. And that again was a period of time where those miraculous things were there for a confirmation
Yes.
to the Lord's people.
Yep. So let's look at the last two verses and we'll finish it up. He says, if any among you wanders from the truth and someone turns him back, let him know. Who's the him?
The person who's strayed.
Let him know. Let him know that he who turns a sinner from error, the other person.
That's the other person, yeah.
Right?
So the first hymn that you asked about is the person who would be approaching his brother and saying,
yes, let him know that he who turns a sinner from the error of his way. So the brother that is correcting the other brother will save a soul from death and cover a multitude of sins.
Yeah.
So what do you make? Well, the idea that he saves a soul from death is pretty easy to understand, right?
Yeah. And it's a precious thing in the sight of the Lord. It's every soul, every person is worth more than the sun, the moon, and the stars, everything. Yep. The Lord covets and wants every person to come to him. And so it is, I think we're dealing with a little bit of figurative language here, because we're not talking about, again, like a meritorious work that would cover sins. We're talking about the idea that that saving a soul, and you're not doing the saving.
No,
it would be the Word that does the saving. So if a person helps to lead someone to the truth and back onto the path, it is as valuable as it's more valuable than anything.
Right,
so
and of course,
I think that's what we're.
Of course, when that person is forgiven, it covers a multitude of sins.
That's true.
That's
true.
To make that all come back around. I can tell you, and I know you've done this too, I've recently spent an enormous amount of time trying to get a person to follow after the right path. And it didn't work. And that happens sometimes.
Yeah.
And one of the things in the Christian life, you've got to be prepared to fail. And just know that it isn't you that's failing. It's the other person failed to take the things that were presented to heart.
Yeah.
Their soil wasn't ready.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think we'll stop her there, John.
All righty. Well, thanks for joining in, everyone. We'll see you next time.